Hi everyone, this is Walden on Wheels for part 3, chapter 14.
Part 3, Grad Student, or My Attempt to Afford Grad School by Moving into a Creepy Red Van. Day 1, a van-dwelling experiment. 14, Purchase. January 2009, Duke University. Savings, $3,517. I flew from Denver to Wheatfield to spend a couple of days with my family during the holidays. My mother, beside herself that her son got into a good school, called up her friends and proudly boasted to neighbors. She bought me a $350 laptop and refused my offers to pay her back. She was also kind enough to provide me with a full inventory of all of Greater Durham's student housing options. I was gracious, but I told her, looking her straight in the eye, that I was going to buy a van and live in it. That was the sort of news that normally would have evoked a terrified, "Oh please, Jesus, no," response from my mother. The sort of response that I surely would have gotten if I'd have, say, started off a sentence with, "Me and my new boyfriend, Ron." But my mother, who'd been so traumatized by my outlandish plans in the past, appeared to have had recently created some temporarily effective, though faulty, defense mechanism that afforded her a few moments to bask in a serene state of denial before finally accepting the truth later on. Without blinking, she proceeded to tell me about condo and apartment options. Meanwhile, I scoured Craigslist ads for used vans in the Raleigh-Durham area. I was amazed with not only how many vans were for sale, but also how reasonably priced they all were. I figured people were trying to sell their excess vehicles because just a few months before, in September 2008, several megabanks collapsed, causing a historic financial meltdown. As a result, there were massive layoffs, home foreclosures, and an unprecedented number of bankruptcies. America was in a state of panic, and while I worried that my parents might get laid off, I couldn't have cared less about this great recession. I was out of debt. I didn't have any valuable possessions that could be repossessed, and I couldn't go bankrupt because I pretty much already was. I had no assets, no health insurance, nothing. As the rest of the country ran around flailing their arms and screaming in their underwear, I watched half sympathetic, half amused. When you've got nothing, I guess you've got nothing to lose. Among my options were a red 1989 Chevrolet G20 NASCAR Edition Sport Van for $1,400, a 1994 Chevrolet Astro Work Van for $750, and a 1997 Dodge Conversion Van for $1,700, which was the ad promised, an unbeatable road trip machine that unfortunately needs some repairs. My needs were few. I wanted a van that was big, under $2,000, in reasonably decent condition, and had never been smoked in because of all the things I was bound to smell of. I didn't want cigarette smoke to be one of them. And then I found a 1994 Ford E150 Econoline, a low-top conversion van, listed for $1,500. The ad read, 1994 Ford van, runs and drives great. Color is Berg, over black. It has reclining rear seat, TV, and VCR. It has an AM/FM CD changer. The van has approximately 119,000 miles. Everything works. It has the 5.0 V8, so the gas mileage is pretty good for a van. Call with any questions. The price is firm. Firm. I like the sound of that. This guy sounded like a straight shooter who didn't mess around with haggling and all that funny business. I emailed him, asked him if anyone had smoked in the van, and when he responded that no one had, I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd be behind the wheel of my new home. I knew I needed a temporary base in Durham to shop for a van and get situated, so I put up an ad on Craigslist seeking some kind soul to lend me his or her couch for a couple of nights. My first response was from a local named Kenneth. "Hello," said Kenneth. "I am 10 men from your school. You sleep on my couch. I only have a couch sleep on or sleep in my waterbed with me and my wife, LOL. I didn't know whether to be more disturbed by the grammatical sacrilege of the English language or the invitation to what could have been an Appalachian-style menage a trois. I declined the offer after I got another response from Marietta, a Jamaican home health care provider. She picked me up from the airport, and on the drive to her place, I told her about Kenneth's response. She laughed heartily, the laugh starting in her belly and exploding out of her mouth. She said I could stay at her place until I found proper housing. For whatever reason, I couldn't bring myself to tell her my actual plans. I let her believe that I was in the market for an apartment near campus, hiding the whole van experiment thing, half because I was embarrassed, and half because I thought she might think I was insane. Nor did I want Marietta channeling the spirit of my mother, saying, except with a Jamaican accent, "No, mister, you're going to get yourself an apartment." The day after I arrived in Durham, I took a bus from Marietta's home to a used car dealership called John's Motors, south of Raleigh, where the Econoline was for sale. Once at John's, I looked over the lot, scanning the rows of sedans, trucks, and SUVs in search of the Ford Econoline I'd found advertised on Craigslist. And there it was, a gleaming giant coated with a burgundy sheen, the sun turning its black-tinted windows a blinding white. It looked out of place among the shiny, spotless SUVs, whose bumpers were proudly faced away as if exhibiting a juvenile disdain for their ponderous, pre-millennial elder. It was bigger than I thought it would be. A man among boys, a van among toys, a venerable circus elephant whose distended underbelly hung vulnerably low, so low that I wondered if it would scrape its undercarriage when climbing up and over speed bumps. I approached it with slow, cautious steps, extended my hand, and pressed my palm against its hood as if to feel for a pulse, feeling instead something akin to the voltage exchanged between lovers upon first brushing shoulders. I circled it, lovingly rolled fingertips over dents and chipped paint, took a step back, and admired its burgundy to black fade, a color scheme that had fallen out of fashion long ago but was more popular, though still considered tasteless and vulgar, in previous decades. The Econoline, upon first view, was everything I hoped it would be. It was big, it was beautiful, and best of all, it was $1,500. I was mesmerized. John was your typical used car salesman. He was a large Italian man who wore dark pants and a black silk dress shirt with gold jewelry cinched around his meaty fingers and wrists. His deceit was poorly hidden behind a thin coating of charm. I knew what I was getting into when he brandished his folksy grin and placed his paw on my shoulder as we shook hands. I was actually buying the van from a guy named Dennis, who put the ad up, but for whatever reason, Dennis wanted me to pick it up at John's used lot. Making things even weirder was their insistence that I pay in cash. "Looks like you got a good deal here, buddy," John said, patting the dash on our test drive. "I fixed it up real nice for you. I even put on a new pair of wipers." It was true. The wipers were new, but I'd later learned that they only had a couple of settings. On slow, I could count on them to wipe every couple of minutes. I was reluctant to put them on fast because the arms waved so rapidly they created a sort of mirage, granting me an exclusive window into what looked like a wet and blurry parallel universe. While the ad promised that it drives great, which was more or less true, it had more than enough problems to justify its $1,500 price tag. One of the two side doors wouldn't open. There were large patches on the windows where the tint had peeled off, and there were enough dents and scrapes and bruises to have sent unluckier vehicles to be crunched under giant tires at monster truck rallies. Worst of all, the tires were bald. So bald that later on, when I went to buy a part at Sears, a couple of mechanics doubled over in laughter when I asked them if they thought the tires would pass inspection. "I'll take it," I told John anyway, unable to hold back my grin. Despite its deformities, it was love at first sight. Plus, I had little choice. My classes were going to start in a couple of days, and I didn't want to overstay my welcome at Marietta's. But when we got down to the business of paying, John tacked on a ludicrous $200 documentation fee. Dennis didn't say anything about this on the phone, I said, heartbroken, knowing that this was precious food money. I'd calculated that I had just enough money to keep me afloat for a couple of weeks, just long enough for me to land a job. That's the deal, buddy. You can take it or leave it. I had no choice. I gave him the $200 and signed my name on the papers with a hard, angry flourish. But as flustered as I was with John, I couldn't have been more thrilled about moving into my new home. I got behind the wheel and started the ignition. There was a grumble, a cough, then a smooth and steady mechanical growl. I turned out of the lot and headed north toward Duke.